What's up guys, so I'm back with another Nilou video, and if you were interested in Columbina, then I do recommend her because this new team here is a massive upgrade for Nilou Bloom. I've been doing a lot of testing and you'll be surprised with the results. One thing I do want to say is the game has completely changed in regards to guides now, because the Wonderland now has DPS Test Dummies. So all you have to do is press F6, then you go into the Wonderland menu. I'm using this one here, which is by Cosmos. If you want the code, it's here. I'll put it in my description. So I can actually use this to show the difference in DPS. So this is the old team, and when you load in here, you can actually swap the dummy to a Rune Guard if you want a bigger enemy. And I'm just going to play around with this old team, and you can see the DPS I'm getting. I'm using Nilou's signature, by the way, but everyone else is on 4-star weapons. Okay, so about 100 seconds, you can see I'm just over 80k DPS. So the good thing is this team is pretty flexible in rotations. So you can almost do whatever as long as you're using everyone's bursts. And you can see this team does get the crits on some of the blooms, so that's doing over 100k sometimes. So yeah, let's pause that now. Maybe about 81k DPS. And you can also see there Kokomi is character 4. She's doing 53% of the team's damage. Unfortunately, in this DPS tracker, you're not able to track the reactions per character, but we don't need to know that. Now let me go in again, but instead of Kokomi, we are using Columbina. I could probably show you a comparison with just holding left click. Honestly, just holding down left click on Columbina doesn't actually seem that bad. So if you haven't mastered the dash cancels, you might as well just do this. So this is DPS I'm getting just holding down left click. So I'm not even doing any crazy animation cancels or anything. Just holding down left click with Prototype Amber. Now that probably means you are taking a bit more damage than if you dash cancel like that. But look how easy it is to play, and look how big the damage is. 109k DPS. Now bear in mind, my Columbina is not even fully built yet. Look at these talent levels. Level 6. But if I quickly do like 108 divided by 81. Imagine if I level the talents, you could be looking at 30 to 40% overall team damage upgrade. You can also do dash cancels. The timing is a bit awkward because you have to do it a bit later than you think. But it'll also help your survivability. I'm mostly doing it for the iframes, and I guess it's slightly more damage. So I try to do 6 charge attacks on Columbina. Yeah, okay, so with dash cancels, almost 109k DPS. So I'm getting it slightly more, but it's not insane. It's mostly for the iframes. Also bear in mind, that is only versus one enemy, so we can't see the true AoE scaling. But this team's AoE should be just as good damage-wise. Now enough damage talk, let's get the elephant in the room out of the way. You're probably wondering how the team even works, because I just replaced the healer with a character who clearly isn't a healer. Now I'm sure you probably realized I am using Prototype Amber on Columbina in this team, and this weapon acts as the healer. Now you're probably wondering, with a team set up like this, only one Prototype Amber, can the team actually even survive? And the interesting thing is, with this new team, it actually does seem to be possible. So if you think about it, Llama and Nahida have the lowest HP in the team. You probably got them around 20k. But these are the two characters you don't really spend much time on field at all with these guys. You're only really using Llama and Nahida for their skill and their burst. So you're mostly only really taking chip damage on these guys. But now, the characters who you are using the most field time with are Nilou and Columbina. And they both have massive HP pools. I've got over 40k. You can actually get even more HP if you wanted to use a HP circlet. I'm using crit damage right now. But if you didn't know, Prototype Amber, the way this works is this healing here scales based on the character receiving's HP. So there's 3 pox, 18% HP at R5. Make sure you get R5 of this weapon. Very important. But 18%, that means compared to Nahida and Llama, Nilou and Columbina actually get significantly more healing. which is very convenient because they're taking more field time. So just to show that difference in healing in action, so let's say if I use Columbina's burst, what is she getting? 2.5k procs. Lauma's getting 1.2k. Nilou's getting 4.4k procs. So they're each getting 3 of those. So the healing is not bad at all. Plus, ultimately, even if you are gradually getting lower HP over time, fights in Stygian Onslaught or the Theatre or even the Abyss, to be completely honest, they're not long fights. Even if your HP is slowly chipping away, you should be able to clear content before your team even gets low enough HP to die. So just to show that, we can show some gameplay of the team in a more realistic Abyss setting. So you'll be able to see just how viable it is to survive, as well as how good the team's damage is. But look at that. See, Columbina's taking a bit of damage, but she kind of almost fully healed herself. Took a bit of damage there, so maybe let's say you take a bit of damage, not perfect. Let's see how much healing I get back again. So she's on 23k now. So let's get into how you build a team. So the first thing I would say is don't make this mistake, which is Columbina's artifact set. Now you're probably looking at the new set, which I guess is supposed to be her signature set, Morningstar and Moon. The issue with this is that this is focused on off-field characters, and you're actually going to be using Columbina a lot on field. So you actually want to use her on the Knights of the Skies Unveiling set. Hopefully, if you're like me, you already grinded this set, so you have good pieces already. I'm personally using an energy recharge sands, HP goblet, and then a crit damage circlet, but you could use a HP circlet here if you want more survivability. It's not that big of a deal, but in my experience, you do want to prioritize a decent amount of energy recharge. Maybe you can get away with a HP sands, to be honest, but with Prototype Amber and Nahida on a Favonius weapon, I found something like 160 energy recharge extremely comfortable. This might even be a bit overkill, but after that you do want to go for as much crit as possible. Don't worry too much about Columbina's EM. One thing you do need to worry about is Columbina's crit rate, because she gets a lot for free. The set is giving you 30% here, and don't forget her talent here actually can give 15 more percent. And then on top of that, Lauma herself, as always, you get an extra 10% here. So that's basically 55% crit rate for free, which is basically, she's in a similar situation to the new Molani teams, where 45 is basically the cap. But it's very difficult. I'm even like overcapping here by quite a bit, but the damage is still very good, even if you're overcapping. As for the rest of the team, Nilou is just a very normal Nilou. I've got her on a signature weapon, and then the HP sets with just HP and then EM, ER. Although, to be honest, with Columbina, I don't really use Nilou's burst as much as I used to do. Lauma is also a very normal Lauma. This is my energy recharge for a Nefer team. For a Nilou team, it's probably a bit overkill. I've got her on the event weapon, and then I'm using the SMS set on her, just trying to stack as much EM as possible. Now, there is discussion on Nahida's build, which is, should you use double Prototype Amber? Personally, in my experience, no, and I'd rather give Columbina Prototype Amber and Nahida Favonius Codex. But I do think even if the double healing is nice, particularly for something like Stygian Onslaught, you do want a Favonius weapon in your team, and that's because the energy generation that you get from Prototype Amber, this only activates after you get your team set up and you start doing rotations. But in order to get that initial setup going, Favonius weapons are huge. But as you saw from the damage calcs, she is a DPS in this team, which means if you are switching Columbina's weapon, honestly, a DPS weapon on her would be a massive damage upgrade. This is Nefer's weapon, for example, which actually works extremely well for Columbina in a team like this, since it's basically designed for Bloom teams. But if you're going to do that, you have to have Prototype Amber on Nahida. But I can show you what the damage looks like. And I mean, you can see my damage is actually pumping here. Obviously, you might want to adjust your build, because with that Prototype Amber, as you can see, my Columbina is on lower HP. but the damage increase is worth it. But yeah, if you're wondering if a 5-star weapon is worth it, I mean, as you can see there, Columbina is doing 70% of the team's damage. That's not quite hyper carry level, but it's pretty close. It's not unreasonable. So a 5-star weapon would be worth it. But yeah, if I was to do a direct swap like that, I do think balancing my stat wise, using a weapon like this and a crit damage circlet is probably a bit too much crit damage. I might even get more damage and more survivability if I did have a HP circlet. So that's something to think about. Speaking of Nefer's weapon, one thing I do want to say that's cool about this team though, a team like this is almost the same team as a Nefer team, so it should make a nice transition. If you want to play Nefer, all you'd have to do is replace either Nahida or Nilou, depending on whatever you prefer. And to be honest, you can even give Columbina and Nefer the similar artifacts. Since they're both the damage dealers, they would use the same weapon. So if you're like me, if you play Nilou Bloom and you play Nefer hypercarry teams, this is another nice benefit of the team. Anyway, with that out of the way, I do want to talk about some drawbacks. The first obvious drawback is without a natural dedicated healer, the healing in this team won't be quite as true as a proper healer. If you really do want extra healing or shielding, you're basically gonna have to replace Nahida here. And you could use someone like Baiju, you can use Yaoyao, you can use Kirara. But if you are gonna use those guys, you are gonna lose Nahida's buffs. And another thing, one of the issues I did notice is Nahida is very good at applying Dendro. But even with her in that team, the enemies do have Hydra Aura quite often, which in traditional Bloom teams is something that you really want to avoid. But I guess it's not quite as bad in a team like this, since less of your damage is coming from Blooms and it's more coming from Columbina's raw damage and your Blooms. But on that topic, replacing Nahida with a sustain that has worse Dendro app, whichever one you pick, it's going to be worse, which means you're going to get even more Hydra Auras on the enemies, which means you're going to have even less Bloom damage. So I don't have Baiju, but I can show you Yaoyao, for example. This is the build I'm going to show you guys Yaoyao with, which I feel like you do want some EM because she's inevitably going to do some of the reactions. So I'm still using Nefer's weapon on Columbina. So you might think the 100k DPS there looks impressive, but you have to compare it versus the 120k we were almost hitting. So I was getting about 100k DPS, so in a way you could say Columbina with Prototype Amber and Nahida is similar to Columbina with a weapon plus Yaoyao. So it wasn't terrible, it was definitely playable. But you can see the damage there, it was a big drop off. I think Baiju would be better than Yaoyao because he does provide buffs, but I don't think he would catch up to Nahida. And then especially once you get into AoE, you might see a bigger drop off because Baiju's app is just doesn't have as much AoE. And another drawback I do have to say is the damage in this team will not compare to Nefer hypercarry. Now that shouldn't matter if you're a Nilou main, because if you want to be a Nefer main, you'll play Nefer. If you want to be a Nilou player, you play Nilou. But I can show you just how big the gap could be. And honestly, I can get over 170k here. And also, to be honest, because Nefer stops you from creating normal blooms, the Nefer team might even have a bit better survivability as well. So was that enough to convince you to try this team out? Hopefully. I think this team is really strong and it's a big upgrade for the Nilou players here. And I'm sure very soon we'll find even more optimizations for a team like this. So the damage increase might be even higher than what I showed. I think us Nilou players, Lauma and now Columbina, we've been treated very well so far in Nodcry. And hopefully you found this video helpful. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll definitely have more Nilou Columbina videos coming up soon.